All right, 99.9 Punk World Radio. You already know what time it is. And right here, we actually have a phenomenal Canadian legend in the building. We got Jon Glen of Another Joe right here live on YouTube and the radio station airwaves. I'm telling you, first and foremost, been a huge fan of your band for a long time. So just being able to converse with a Canadian punk rock legend is
Uh,
such an honor this evening.
Thanks, man. I don't, I don't know if we should use the word legend, but I'm super stoked to hang out with you, and I appreciate you saying that. It's really awesome.
Hey man, you're most certainly welcome. You've done more stuff than a lot of individuals that I actually met throughout my career in this particular genre of music, man. So, in my honest opinion, that makes you a legend, man. Like it's not every day you can say you were on Much Music. That's all I'm gonna say.
Sure. Do people know what much music is anymore? Is that a thing?
I I don't know. I guess they brought it back via TikTok. Supposedly, I tried
Oh, really?
to download. Downloaded TikTok just to view it, and I'm like, this is not much music.
So
Not what I remember.
they're actually they're actually having like much music on TikTok. Is it streaming? Like, is that the idea?
No, so it's kind of like 1 minute long videos, and they're doing like it's so hard to explain because it's totally not what I'm used to. It's like little snippets of interviews in their little TikTok studio or something. I can't
Oh,
even really explain it, but it's definitely not much music that we remember.
right. No, totally. Yeah.
But for the people that are listening, if you don't know what much music is, just honestly Google it and it'll blow your mind.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Totally.
But John, I know you're a busy guy, man, so I'm going to dive right into this interview, man. But I got to take you back to August of 1994, where Another Joe was actually formed in Richmond, British Columbia. I was wondering if you can actually just tell our listeners the origin story behind this amazing band, and of course, how did you actually get connected with the other members originally?
Yeah. The band itself, like the Another Joe, uh, sort of came out of another band or a project or a little group that we had that with some good friends of mine and John, who is the original drummer of Another Joe as well. He and I were a part of that group, and like I said, these are friends, some of which are we're friends with to this day. But I kind of, as we had were playing and I guess becoming more serious about it, or at least I was becoming more serious about what we were doing. I was like, hey, you know what? I think we can actually like write songs and be in a band and make it like an actual band to perform, of which it wasn't sort of like that. We would just jam and just hang out. So John and I both decided that we wanted to kind of take a stab at having a band. And we used to play in my dad's sign shop way back in the day. So we would just move all the tables and stuff out of the way, and we set up the drums and my guitar, uh, and the PA system was like actually was my the stereo system in the shop. So I would like jerry rig a microphone into it and just scream through this thing, trying to hear through the speakers over John's drumming. Um, and then and I kind of wanted to have a three piece and just keep it isolated. And at that time, my favorite band on the planet Earth was Nirvana, so they were a three piece. So I'm like, of course, we need to be a three piece. And um, in Vancouver, there's a paper that's called the Georgia Straight, and back in the day, you would thumb through the classifieds and you'd post put a posting in there looking for a band member or whatever you're looking for, and I had posted in there looking for a bass player, and this very talkative, excited young lady named Allison called me up, and she actually tried her best to convince me, and I had never met her before. She's just talking to me about maybe it shouldn't be a three piece, because she played guitar. She didn't play bass at all at that point. But she had her friend that did play bass, who his name is Kyle, and he's again in the circles still. And I was pretty adamant. I'm like, no, you know what? I'm looking for a bass player in that side. And she's like, okay, well, I'll play bass. I'm like, all right. So she came out and I lightly auditioned with us, and she was awesome, like right out of the gates, and we all just clicked really well, and that was it. We just started playing music, and I had a lot of songs kind of written at the time, and we just learned them and just became another Joe, like right there in the back of the sign shop.
And I gotta ask as well, because obviously, another Joe isn't a three-piece band. Like, what actually made you decide to change your mind and actually make it, more than what you wanted to be originally?
Like adding another guitar player now?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Ready, the new album. It's so much more. It's super guitar driven, and it's drum and guitar driven. It's everything driven. It's just a really bigger, wider sound. So that's the main thing. Like, so we could play live and be able to be consistent with what's on the new album. And the other thing too is I'm a pretty animated performer when I play live. So any opportunity I can actually get off of my guitar and act like a clown and do whatever it is that I'm doing, it's great. So even in the rehearsal space when Ryan and I are playing, I love the fact that I can actually take my hands off the guitar, and it's just more dynamic. We can really play with the two guitars, and with a three-piece, you just don't get the same, or it's more difficult to get that same dynamic feel, especially live. So that's the main. It's just so we can perform bigger and better, really.
And also, as well, a year after actually forming inside in the summer of 1995, July to be exact, you guys actually played your first show in a Vancouver bar called The Abyss. From what you actually can recall about that eventful night, I was wondering, what can you remember from that night? And of course, what was it like just being able to perform at The Abyss all those years ago?
It's funny. I don't have a lot of like distinct memories of it, but I've seen pictures, and it's funny when we remastered and re-released P Against the Wind, I went through a lot of old pictures and I added a couple to the vinyl, and there's a specific picture in there that is of that specific show you're talking about. I remember the positive thing is I don't remember a lot of fear, which is great. Like, I don't remember crap in my pants or anything insane. I just remember we were just so green. I had never played music on a stage before that. So I remember even looking at the pictures, I look so stationary and rigid, just there. But I remember, I think it was really comfortable because my brother's band at the time was playing as well. So it was there was like nobody there. There's probably 25 people in the entire bar and maybe 10 of them didn't know who we are. So 15 people probably knew who we were. So, I mean, there wasn't too much pressure to play, but it was awesome, and it had to happen. That was our very first show ever playing live ever. And then the very next show that we ever played live was on tour in California. So we immediately just went and did that crazy stuff.
And speaking of those California shows, I actually read that you guys actually had a whole tour booked out there over in the San Jose area, but unfortunately, some of them actually got canceled. I was always wondering after reading that, like, well, why did some of those shows get canceled? Like, was it like the promoter issue, or like was it just these venues didn't really want to follow through with another Joe booking?
Well, you know what? At that time, I could have been any number of things. I mean, it was so totally, completely, fully DIY. Maximum Rock and Roll Magazine had Book Your Own Fucking Life out, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I mean, it was just this literally, I can swear, right? This is the internet. I can swear on the internet, right?
Oh, okay. We're completely uncensored. Definitely, like, swear away.
Okay, good, because I just swear.
Somebody better call the West Coast.
I couldn't even, like, at that time, there was no cell phones, there was no nothing. So it's just like you would just show up, and most of the communication was done by like mailing each other or maybe a phone call. But I mean, it was just so grassroots that, I mean, it wasn't even like keeping tabs on each other. I swear probably half the shows were just sort of booked by letter, and then we just showed up and then there was nothing happening. And it was like, oh God. But it really, I think that we learned a lot from it. I think we learned a lot about perseverance from it. I think we learned to survive off of it. And we honestly learned how to play. Like, I honestly learned more on that, on just the few shows that we did get to play, which was insane. Like, I mean, just doing what we did was crazy. But you know, we learned what a sound check was, and we learned set times, and we learned, you know, there are a few things that we learned from that. It was really cool. And we got to see also, I know for myself that was my first experience seeing like DIY punk rock shows. You know, I never had seen them before. I mean, I didn't even consider the words punk rock didn't go beside the words Another Joe ever before that. I mean, we only just sort of used that name as a description for us because at the time that's what was happening. And that was kind of this growing thing. I think Ryan and I were actually talking about this not too long ago. I could swear that we used to, or I used to describe us as a power pop or pop heavy rock, or I just didn't know. So it was because of that tour and booking and stuff like that, that people go, oh, you're like a punk rock band. I was like, oh, all right, cool. So a lot of great stuff came from that.
And also, October of 1996, Another Joe and Gob actually came together to record the split 21-song album called As Seen on TV. I was wondering if you could actually tell our listeners the story behind that classic project. And of course, how did Another Joe and Gob come together as one for this monumental project?
Well, I mean, how we came together, we Gob and Another Joe come from the same scene back at that time. Tom and Allison were seeing each other also at that time. We were just tight, and Gob was a huge, I mean, Gob is a huge influence why we even did that first tour. Like, I mean, I kind of would look to them and go like, what were you doing? And Tom or Theo, one of the two, was like, well, we go on tour. It's like, okay, well, I guess we'll go on tour, and then we'll go do tour stuff. Right. They were a huge inspiration to us. And I can't even remember how it kind of came together to do the album together. But I would only imagine it was primarily Theo's idea, especially with the title of it. Theo's creative and funny and all this kind of stuff. And that's his jam. So it's like, it came together. I remember it came together really quick. I remember writing for it really quick. I remember recording for it was super quick. Like, I swear it was like 2 or 3 days probably, like, of just banging through the songs, mixing the songs, doing the whole thing. Everything about that album in that period to me is fast. Like, it was just like really, really quick. But it was a huge opportunity for us. And we had some, I mean, they had released Too Late No Friends with Soda previous to that. So they had so much amazing momentum behind them at the time, and which just carried on. And I'm still to this day just incredibly grateful that we had the opportunity to do an album with them. It was very cool.
And obviously, as you mentioned, like, this album like was made so quickly. It was kind of like a boom, 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 like one and done type album. Just going through that album so quickly and creating it so quickly, did you actually have any thought in your mind that, you know, this is going to be a project that's really going to set Another Joe into a huge upward spiral?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that, I mean, for me, I don't think that you sit down and go, like, it wasn't a strategic thing or kind of like that. Like, it was just an opportunity. I think also it was just a neat opportunity to be able to release more stuff. Like, I remember because we released a vinyl, a vinyl, version of the album originally as well. And I thought that was just the coolest thing to have, like, a record. Like, I just never thought, like, oh my God, we got a record. That's so rad. or more CDs, or we had the opportunity to do some amazing touring. That there are times during that tour that I remember we played, what was it, the Opera House, Toronto Opera House. I think it was the Opera House in Toronto, and a ridiculously, unbelievably awesome show. I know for Another Joe, it was the biggest crowd that we'd ever played in front of. And I just remember the feedback was incredible. You know, that tour we played, that was the tour that we played on Much Music in the environment. Just some amazing, awesome opportunities came out. We met so many awesome people. It actually shocks me to this day how many people still are hungry to have that record or that album either re-released or put on digital or whatever the case may be. It's amazing how many people bring it up. Still, I mean, I felt the same thing even with the P album being really. I can't believe how many people are so pumped to get their hands on that. So it's pretty rad, really fun time.
And also, since you mentioned actually P Against the Wind, October 8th of 96, you guys actually released that classic 10-track album. Just diving into that album a little bit, I have to ask, like, can you tell us a bit more about the recording process behind that amazing album? And of course, as you mentioned, you know, people are so hungry for it. What was it like actually reissuing this back out on vinyl 20 plus years later?
Yeah, well, at the time, when we, you know, it was sort of your classic indie rock kind of thing. You know, we were super practiced. We knew exactly what we needed to do. We had zero money. Like I'm like, it's like, there's nothing. It's not like there was like label support or anything like that. I mean, we were broke and making an album. But I do remember, you know, we recorded the album at a fellow's home called, his name is Jason Flower in Saanich, which is called outside of Victoria on Vancouver Island. And I remember the day before, to this day, I remember the day before hanging out at John's place and having Subway sandwiches and hanging out and just being so excited to go and actually record. We'd record demos and stuff at that point on like my 4-track, but this was sort of like oh my God, we're like actually going to go record a record. Like that's so cool. And we went to Jason's place and same thing. I swear we found him in Maximum Rock and Roll magazine. If not, it was the Georgia Strait. And went to his house and took over the house and set all our gear up. And I'm pretty sure we played live off the floor all together to get the takes. And then, and I say it actually in a video as well. And then the next day came, and only because I saw Jason made mention of this, I knew something had gone wrong with me. And I guess I lost my voice and I just couldn't sing for the life of me. Anything that I was singing was awful. And it was just a totally defeated kind of like, oh, fuck, like really? And there's not much you can do to switch that up. So I don't remember if we went home with a plan, but I know that we went home I went home with my tail between my legs and I was just like feeling like such an ass. And we probably not too long afterwards. I mean, I would think a month or two or something. We had discovered Ernie, who had a studio in New Westminster at the time. And we went and clearly I got my voice thing worked out to a point, and then we went and recorded the vocals and the background vocals, and Ernie ended up mixing the album as well, and it turned out great. I mean, all in all, I mean, that album to this day doesn't sound that bad. Like, I mean, really for what it was. And then to touch on how it was to re-release it, I can almost say without a shadow of a doubt that revisiting that album, because I haven't listened to the album in 20 something years. I don't listen to Another Joe music, you know, like that from back in the day. And I hadn't given it really any thought whatsoever until People Punk Rock Records came up and they're like, dude, we got to re-release this album. And I'm like, okay. In the process of remastering the album, which kind of forced me to be in a position that I had to revisit the album and listen to it and work with Mystery Room mastering or remastering it, and then, you know, doing the artwork again to have it somewhat the same, and going through all the lyrics. And incidentally, if you have CDs, lyrics are wrong and all this stuff is all wrong. It is crazy. It meant the absolute world to me. Like, I didn't realize how much I missed it, how much that album and the experience of it meant to me. And I can almost say without any shadow of a doubt that reconnecting with P Against the Wind really gave me the added spirit or interest in even really re-engaging with Another Joe. Like, a lot of people don't know that. I mean, when I started recording Ready or Not, the plan was never to regroup Another Joe, have a band, and, you know, in 2023 go play some song or go play some music at all. It was I had music and I wanted to release it, and I happened to write music that sounds like Another Joe music, and I'm like, you know what, I think there's enough people that are interested in Another Joe, maybe they'd be interested in hearing some new music. But that's where I was going to leave it. Like, it was just going to be an album, and maybe a one reunion show type thing to celebrate having an album, but that was it. But revisiting P Against the Wind really made me realize how special the band is to me, and especially how the response from fans and people that listen to Another Joe and listen to the album, I like blew my freaking mind. I couldn't believe how many people that were passionate and wanted to hear Another Joe music. So that really excited me, and kind of put everything back together. So re-releasing P Against the Wind meant more to most anybody will ever know.
And I just got to bring this up before we move on the topic of this amazing album. I remember my favorite song off that project is actually "Eat at Bernie's." Man, I love the music video. Every time I think of that song, I always picture that dog stealing that guy's skateboard, man, just running off with it.
Yeah, that's Bryce, the skateboarder, and God, I can't remember what the dog's name is. I can't remember, but the dog's owner is Ingrid, and Ingrid is the gal on the cover of P Against the Wind. So there's a neat little triangle there. But yeah, it was a fun video to shoot. It's a fun song.
I have to ask, man, how many takes did it take for that dog for you guys to get the dog to take the skateboard, or was that just completely improv?
Dude, that's just what he did. That he yeah, I think that we did that because that's just what he did. I think it was a girl dog. I think that's just what she did. She just chased skateboards, and we're like, well, that just works out perfectly. You know what? That's probably why she was ever in it, because Ingrid probably told us that she chased skateboarders and skateboards. I'm like, well, that couldn't be more perfect. Let's make that happen.
And also, as well, in the fall of 1999, Another Joe and Small Man Records actually began to work together. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners a bit more about this particular record deal, and of course, how did Another Joe and the executives of Small Man originally get connected?
I think we got connected. The connection was through Choke, who had released their latest album at that time with them. And we were close with Choke, so that's where that kind of came from. And they were really into Crandoodle Daddy, so we re-released Crandoodle Daddy on Small Man Records. And then they were stoked to release a new album, and we had a new record kind of ready to get going. So it was super straightforward, and really nice guys, and all really great people. And it was a fun time for us as well, because we kind of got closer to Choke, because they were like our label mates. And then we met Monine through that relationship with Choke and Small Man. And Kenny is one of my favorite people, and they're just an absolute awesome band. So that it was a really super fun time. And Yeah, it was really straightforward. And then Ernie, who recorded the vocals in the mix for P Against the Wind, he also recorded and mixed Cran Doodle Daddy and Plasticine. So that relationship with Ernie lasted to this day. It has lasted.
I have to ask, is Ernie doing any work on this new Another Joe project? 'Cause I do know we're going to be digging into this album here momentarily, but since we're on the topic of Ernie again, has he done any new work actually on this most recent album?
Ernie's all over this album. Ernie used to be the drummer for a band called Removal as well, and he's done a number of different drumming projects. He's I have always admired and loved Ernie's drumming. He has a super rad style. One of the most I love drummers. I just dig drummers so much. I love drummers that you can close your eyes and you're like, oh, that's so and so playing. Oh, that's so and so playing. Ernie to me is that kind of drummer that I can kind of just hear him play. I'm like, that's Ernie playing. So I count myself super lucky that he played drums. And I tell you, man, we've stayed very close over the years, whether Another Joe is playing or not, us personally. And I'd be hard pressed to. I know that the new album would absolutely not sound the way it sounds if it were not for Ernie's involvement. I doubt it would even have been recorded, at least in this fashion, if it wasn't for Ernie's involvement. It was really important for me to kind of connect with a partner on this album that I felt super comfortable with, like considering that I have not performed music in 2 decades. So I really required someone that I had a huge amount of trust and faith in, and also that I had a great amount of respect for, that could tell me something sucked or tell me to redo it and it's not going to bother me or be some weird issue. I trust Ernie and I'm super comfortable with Ernie. And yeah, he co-produced it with me. He did an amazing job. He poured himself into this album. So yeah, it's Ernie all the way on this album. He's everywhere.
And also as well, before we move off the topic of Small Man Records, I actually read that you guys actually headlined Small Man Records' very first annual Small Man Records tour, where you guys actually hit 14 different ski resorts in British Columbia and Alberta. From what you can recall, I was wondering if you can tell us a bit more about this tour, and of course, what was it like just performing at ski resorts?
Cold. It was cold. Lots of cold. I think also at the time I think Allison went snowboarding. I think there were opportunities to go snowboarding at these resorts, and I didn't really snowboard. So I stopped snowboarding at that point, like just before that. Great timing. But I remember snowy and cold and thinking to myself, why in Christ's name don't we tour at summer? Why can't it be the Summer Lake tour? But it was super awesome. My number one memory of that tour is almost coming face to face with death on the freaking slushy, insane winter black ice roads. And poor Allison she was on her driving shift. And to this very day, we talk about this, this time that we're driving into some part of BC, I can't remember right now, and hit black ice, and our freaking van just literally went like on a 90-degree angle, and just, we've got, a tech and people in the back of the van rolling all over the place, just freaking out. It's just pandemonium. And I swear it's on video. I think Choke were in front of us in a van and someone was behind us in a van and they're just watching our van go down. I think it was videoed. Like someone's like, holy shit, Another Joe's going to die. And Allison kicked ass and dug deep and got us out of that in one piece. And that's like one of my main, it was just so crazy. Just the craziest that you can't even describe how nuts it was, but it was super awesome. We got to again, same thing, met some amazing people. That tour was the first tour that we played a number of shows with Monine later after the kind of resort part. And I think we toured with SNFU for a little bit on that. And we got to get closer with those guys on that tour. That was a super awesome tour. I had a lot of great memories on that.
And also as well, just going into today of 2022, you guys are actually currently set to release your like first album in almost 20, I think over 22 years, titled Ready or Not. I was wondering if you can actually tell our listeners, from what you are allowed to speak about, of course, you tell our listeners what can they expect from this up and coming Another Joe album.
What to expect? Expect the unexpected. I don't know. It's I think if someone was to press me and go, like, so many bands, they'll sort of do a new album and go, oh, this is the closest album to whatever album that we did in the past. I could probably argue that it's closer to Pee Against the Wind sort of time. It's definitely, I think it's a smarter album. It's not, I really found myself at one point writing for the sake of writing, like writing as fast as I could for the sheer sake of that's what was expected of everybody, was they were supposed to just write songs as fast. And what's great about taking an enormous break is that just goes away. And it's just like, I had many mission statements during this recording, like writing the album and recording the album, cutting tracks off the album, doing everything where it's like nothing, there were no rules, and I would just stick to my guns. If it didn't sound like it's going at Mach 10, that's perfectly okay. Life's a bitch. This is the music that I'm writing. This is the music. It's so fun to play. But it's definitely, it's just smarter. It's deeper. Like the lyrics are certainly way deeper and mean so much more. There are actual parts to the songs, like it's a more mature record. I'm actually really super proud of it. And sonically it sounds fantastic. I think it sounds better than any of our previous albums. So like I said, Ernie, and that's all Ernie.
And also as well, the listeners are going to get a taste of this album later on this month when you guys drop the first single, Mexico. I was wondering, man, because I personally, you already gave me the opportunity to listen to it, and I got to say, it's absolutely rad and killer. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm excited for you guys to drop this single, just so I can add it in my radio station's airwaves. But for the listeners, since they didn't get the opportunity to hear it, what can they expect from Mexico? Because I know what they can expect, and it's definitely going to melt their eardrums.
Thank you for saying that. What's interesting, and I didn't kind of put this together until revisiting all the lyrics and revisiting the themes of Pee Against the Wind. And one of the main themes, and a very main theme, was escapism. It's like clearly, and I know personally where all this comes from, but it's like escapism, getting away. That was always a theme. The irony is the last proper formal single that Another Joe released was Eat It Bernie's. I mean, technically, Crandoodle, As Seen on TV, Crandoodle Daddy, Plasticine. I mean, we never did another video. We never did a formal release. We were set to do a formal release for Plasticine, but we didn't. So the irony is Mexico is absolutely all about that escapism, getting away, taking off from crazy times, getting away, in my perspective in the song was me and my girl just getting the fuck out of here and getting away from all the crazy times. Eat It Bernie's is exactly the same thing. I mean, Eat It Bernie's is a metaphor for getting away, and it's the one place, Bernie's, that you can get to that it's going to be, all this shit's going to leave you behind if you eat at Bernie's. Why I came up with Eat It Bernie's, I have absolutely no idea. I couldn't tell you truthfully right now, but it's pretty neat that was our first single ever. And then now our latest single is thematically exactly the same thing. So, or I don't know if that's sad, and maybe I need to go on a vacation.
It definitely sounds like a full circle moment. You know what I mean? I got to say, It definitely is a phenomenal single. And when I actually listened to that song, I really did get the Pee Against the Wind vibes as well. So I definitely understand exactly what you're saying. And the listeners are going to understand come later on this month when they hear this single.
Yeah, next Friday, actually, the next Friday it's alive, which I can't wait. The 16th.
And also as well, I actually read that you guys are actually set to do it's set to do a tour. From what you're actually allowed to mention, I don't know if there any of these venues are locked in, but whereabouts in Canada are you guys going to be performing? And I got to say, this is pretty much a personal question for myself because
Yeah,
I would love to see you guys live in concert. So
yeah. Nothing. Truthfully, nothing is penned in. We know kind of between us what we'd like to see. Right now, it's actually nuts because so much time is focused on getting the album out. We have a video coming out for Mexico as well on the 23rd. So we've been working on so many projects and then, just getting all this stuff together. Right now, what's super important that is, we're really just focused on getting new music out there. So there's new stuff and we can get people pumped and excited. But that being all said, I personally we're going to try our very best to do segmented areas in Canada, especially, and get to chunks. We're talking right, with entities out there and seeing where we're going to be touring. I can almost guarantee it will not be a snowboarding freaking winter fest. I can pretty much guarantee that. But yeah, we're working on it, and it definitely Canada. I'm super excited to play. Again, the enthusiasm of everybody else has completely charged me up. So it's just like, yeah, man, we got to get here, we got to get there, we got to get here. So we're working on it right now. But right now, just a major focus is just getting Ready or Not out there and getting all that stuff out. Oh, there you are. Can you hear me?
there we go.
Oh,
Little mishap.
Right. Okay.
Say though, it definitely hear me. Perfect.
Oh, you're breaking.
It definitely sounds like you got thinking in the pot. So I'm excited. Definitely excited to see what dates do come out on that flyer.
Yeah, well, we're working on it.
But
for
also,
sure.
aside from this album, and of course, aside from what is next for yourself, Joe? Like, is this going to be the last hoorah for another Joe, or do you actually have more passion to actually do another album?
I think that like right now, it's so funny. I've actually had a couple of people ask me that very same question. It's like, so you just said it's the one, right? And I don't know. I just wrote, I just started finagling through a new tune yesterday, actually. So there's still lots of inspiration in there and lots of stuff. To be perfectly honest, I'm pumped to sit down. The music on Ready or Not was very, very much myself focused on the music. I'm super excited to sit down with the rest of the guys and our gal and do it, bring some tunes to the room and go, hey, here's something I've been working on. So we can kind of all work on it together. So I have no doubt that there's going to be some new stuff, but right now, I am hell bent focused on getting the new album out and we'll see what happens after that.
And also, John, this is the time to interview quickly right before I wrap things up. That I give a chance for the individual to tie into the radio station. There's a chance to give like shout outs to whomever they want to give shout outs to, but most of all, your social media handles. That way our listeners can stay updated on everything Another Joe if they're not already doing so.
Yeah. Another Joe music, I think everywhere is where you can find us on our social media. Anotherjoe.com is our fabulous webpage, and People of Punk Rock Records Our records on pre-sale right now. So if you go to People Punk Rock Records, you can find it there. I would shout out those guys. Anthony and Juan are absolutely freaking amazing, and have been awesome to another Joe. Yeah, and like I say, next Friday, December 16th, you will hear our first single, Mexico, which is being released, and that is the first one in literally over 22 years. And you can pre-save that now. If you go to our Facebook or Instagram, you can find links to pre-save that on Spotify or iTunes. And then early next year, we're going to have our new record, Ready or Not, coming out, which I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am to have that out and out to the world.
And foremost, John, thank you so much, man, for just giving, Punk World Radio FM just a little bit of your time here this evening and just talking about, some amazing stories and shared throughout your career. And of course, talking brand new record. Definitely excited. Of course, thank you for the music project when it does come out in general public.
This internet, I'm sure you said wonderful, warm, lovely things, but I could hardly hear that. It's all boggled up on myself, but
especially during Canadian weather.
Yeah. But thanks so much for having me on here. I was really just saying,
I just freaking, of course, just myself and the radio station of your time here this evening. It was definitely honored to speak with you.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate the opportunity. It's very cool.
Hey, you are most certainly sure done. Definitely will talk again soon. For now, definitely have your